My name is Boyce Upholt, and I am a journalist and author. I was a part of the first cohort of TFA Fellows, so from 2016 to 2018. I wrote a book called The Great River, The Making and Unmaking of the Mississippi. And the purpose to me, there's various purposes here. Partially, I wrote it, I wanted to understand the place where I lived, which was so close to the Mississippi River. But I felt like the Mississippi tells us a lot about this country. It tells us a lot about where we are situated in terms of geology and ecology. And so my hope is that people who read the book will feel more connection with the Mississippi and feel more connection with the place where they live, what in Mississippi or other places in the watershed, and kind of understand how to take care of that place better by knowing it. I was working part-time for Teach for America and trying to get started working as a writer. So writing for some local magazines and then bigger and bigger magazines. And along the way, I heard of this guy named John Rusky who lives up in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and he was a canoe guide that took tourists out on the big, mighty Mississippi, which I thought was sort of crazy because I thought the Mississippi was big and dirty and engineered. Back in 2015, I got an assignment to profile John, who is now a dear friend. And we spent 3 days and 2 nights canoeing on the Mississippi River that spring. And I was just blown away. From the very first island that we landed on as we were setting up our camp, I was just like, this is such a beautiful place. And I'd been living in Mississippi at that point for 6 years, not very far from the Mississippi River, and somehow I hadn't known that the Mississippi River was so beautiful. I knew that I was going to stick around and spend a lot of time on that river, get out there and camp and paddle as much as I could. But driving home from that very first trip, I was already thinking, I'm trying to make a career as a writer. This river seems really fascinating. That was the beginning of a 10-year journey to get this book into the world. While I had the fellowship, I had the opportunity to join John Rusky, the canoe guide that inspired all this. He was going on this long canoe trip from St. Louis to the Gulf of Mexico. I managed to work with the fellowship and with Delta State to make that functional, looking at independent studies and things like that. But so 1,000 miles canoeing and camping on the Mississippi River was an incredible way to get to know this water body deeply and intimately and understand really what it is still today. What moved me the most, that trip came actually not long after my father had passed away, and he was a scientist and a traveler. He was an inspiration to me in many ways, and I felt like doing that trip and writing this book were sort of completing a legacy that he had handed down to me. It was sort of stepping into his shoes in a way. And so I remember we were out there on this beautiful sandbar, and a big storm rolled through, and you could see the White River coming in across the way. So I felt really connected to this place, and then I could feel connection to my father as well. And so it's, again, thinking about the ways that these spaces help us situate in ourselves in the world, physically and emotionally as well. And then so that was a reminder of how much the river could mean. The connections I've made with other fellows and with the faculty members have been really valuable as I go and tell those stories. And actually recently I was given an assignment, hired specifically to write about another fellowship project. So the Mississippi Delta Nature and Learning Center, there was a publication that was interested in sort of profiling this work of bringing, ecological knowledge and foodstuffs and new agricultural traditions to the region. So it was so great to go back up and get to spend a day reconnecting with Amanda Delperdang and her husband John, and sort of seeing how another project had advanced so far. It was really heartening to get in the program and to be so embraced by it, and still to be embraced and feel like to know that the fellowship program sees my project as making a meaningful contribution. And so it's taught me that the value of this program is not just to build more educational initiatives, and I know it's doing that, and that's so important. I spent 8 years working in schools in the Delta, and there's a lot of progress yet to be made, and we need that. But I would say it's worth noting that the fellowship is really just about keeping good people connected to the Delta and connected to Delta State. And so anyone that can think of something a project that can make a difference in a region that still has a lot of differences to be made, should look at this fellowship as an opportunity to see if they can take that project somewhere further. So I think the Fellows program was transformational for this book. I was living in the Delta. I had lots of friends at Delta State University, but wouldn't necessarily have made sense for me to go and get a graduate degree if not for this fellowship program helping me carve out space and time to work on this book. And so the courses I took at Delta State, digging into the history of the Mississippi Delta, the books that I read in that class are in the bibliography of the book. It just deepened my knowledge in these essential ways. I got to work with professors to learn how to do photography, which was really useful for the magazine stories I was working on along the way. And so actually the thesis that I wrote to finish my master's degree at Delta State, much of that material is in the finished book, right? So it literally supported the construction of this book that has gone on to be a national bestseller and to win some prestigious awards. And so, yeah, it just wouldn't have been the product that it is without the time and space and instruction that I got from Delta State faculty.